Tony Podesta, who created the Podesta Group, in 2010. The firm has lost clients as it has been increasingly drawn into the investigation by the special counsel. Luke Sharratt, New York Times, Washington. Tony Podesta, a prominent lobbyist and Democratic donor who has come under scrutiny from the escalating special counsel investigation, stepped down on Monday from the firm he co-founded, according to people familiar with the firm. The firm, the Podesta Group, has lost clients as it has been increasingly drawn into the investigation by the special counsel, Robert S. Mueller III. On Monday, the Podesta Group and another company with which it had worked, Mercury Public Affairs, were referenced, though not by name, in an indictment of two former Trump campaign officials, Paul Manafort and Rick Gates. No charges have been brought against Mr. Podesta or officials from the Podesta Group or Mercury. But both firms have been subpoenaed for records and testimony about their work on behalf of a client referred to them in 2012 by Mr. Manafort and Mr. Gates. The European Centre for a Modern Ukraine, a non-profit group based in Brussels. The work for the European Centre, which ended in 2014, was cited in the indictment on Monday as part of a scheme by Mr. Manafort and Mr. Gates to gain support in Washington for the longtime client, the pro-Russian leader Viktor Yanukovych, a former president of Ukraine, while evading disclosure requirements for foreign lobbying. Mr. Manafort and Mr. Gates were charged with violating tax, banking and foreign lobbying laws in an effort to hide more than $75 million in income from their work in Ukrainian politics. The indictment was the subject of intense interest on K Street, where the Justice Department's enforcement of the foreign lobbying requirements under the Foreign Agents Registration Act is widely seen as toothless. The charges against Mr. Manafort and Mr. Gates that are related to the act, coming as powerful members of Congress are demanding more enforcement of the law, were seen by some as a shot across the bow of Washington lobbyists. Mr. Podesta announced his departure at a staff meeting on Monday. He is the brother of Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign chairman John Podesta, who co-founded the firm. Tony Podesta has become the target of attacks from conservatives looking to shift attention away from Mr. Mueller's scrutiny of President Trump's campaign team. A person familiar with Mr. Podesta's remarks at Monday's staff meeting said he cited attacks from Fox News and the conservative media as making it impossible to run a public affairs shop. That person was not authorized to publicly discuss the internal meeting and spoke on condition of anonymity. A partner at the firm, who also did not want to be identified discussing delicate internal affairs, said that even before Mr. Podesta announced his departure, some senior partners were trying to convince clients to remain with them as they worked to reintroduce the company with branding that would not include Mr. Podesta's name. The partner added that the effort had been fueled partly by Mr. Podesta's aggressive efforts to defend himself against coverage by the conservative news media on the special counsel's scrutiny of the Podesta Group. The firm has been among Washington's highest-grossing lobbying shops for years. Mr. Podesta's resignation was first reported by Politico on Monday afternoon. Mr. Podesta's lawyer on Monday sent a cease and desist letter to a Fox News host over his claims on air that Mr. Podesta and his brother, John Podesta, worked closely with Mr. Manafort on behalf of Russia. The host, Tucker Carlson, said that the Podesta brothers and Mr. Manafort were the central figures in Mr. Mueller's investigation. Mr. Podesta's lawyer, Jeffrey R. Gariner, wrote to Mr. Carlson on Monday that his false and defamatory statements have caused damage and injury to the reputation of Mr. Podesta and the Podesta Group. The indictment on Monday did not name the Podesta Group or Mercury, instead referring to them as two Washington, D.C., the firms that were recruited by Mr. Manafort and Mr. Gates to lobby in the United States on behalf of Yanukovych, the Party of Regions, and the government of Ukraine. Mr. Podesta and a spokesman for his firm did not respond to requests for comment. Michael McKeon, a partner at Mercury, said in a statement that the firm takes its obligations to follow all laws, rules and regulations very seriously and has and will continue to cooperate with the Office of the Special Counsel in its investigation. The companies were paid more than $1.1 million each, according to lobbying filings, to try to rally support among American policymakers and opinion leaders for Mr. Yanukovych, and to quell concerns about his leadership and his government's jailing of a political rival. Neither firm initially registered with the Justice Department under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which requires firms that lobby or conduct public relations for foreign individuals, companies, governments and political parties to reveal detailed information about their work. The Podesta Group and Mercury said they relied on assurances provided by the non-profit group that it was neither funded nor controlled by any foreign government or party. But both firms were compelled this year to belatedly, and, in the case of Mercury, begrudgingly, register under the Act, after their activities came under scrutiny from the Justice Department. In his statement, Mr. McKeon said Mercury followed the advice of legal counsel in its disclosure of its relationship with the European Centre and noted that it registered the relationship under less detailed congressional lobbying disclosure rules. The Podesta Group also reported its relationship with the European Centre under those disclosure rules. Glenn Thrush contributed reporting. A version of this article appears in print on October 31, 2017, on page A16 of the New York edition, with a headline under scrutiny from Mueller, top Democratic donor resigns from lobbying firm.